ESPN, down the shore, 97.5, The Fanatic. Mike, welcome back from Santa Clara, my friend. How you doing on this Wednesday morning?
Doing all right. I do agree as well. I mentioned on my show the day after how disappointed I was in the defense. As John mentioned, they didn't get the lead once. They got the lead twice in the fourth quarter of that game, and the defense was unable at home to hold the lead in the fourth quarter twice. As lousy
remember,
as
guys, they did get 2 picks in that second half, and the Eagles' offense wasn't able to capitalize.
This is true, but you have a lead in the fourth quarter twice.
Yeah,
if you are an elite level. Look, the one big thing I took from the Seahawks-Niner game was the Seahawks stuffed the Niners in a locker. The Eagles' offense didn't stuff the Niner locker into an offense. They struggled to get them off the field, and that was even after George Kittle got hurt in that game. We had this built up in our head that the Eagles had this elite defense. Why? Because we like Vic Fangio. We don't like Nick Sirianni as much, so his offense sucks. But Vic Fangio, who we like, we don't want to call him out. His defense did not get the job done on a game at home when you had the lead in the fourth quarter. It's okay to say it for one day. It played well for most of the year, but you know what else they didn't play well? In the Bronco game. They had a lead in the fourth quarter. I know the offense was not good, but we knew that. You were supposed to be the unit to bail them out in those moments, and twice they could not do it against superior opponents.
Yeah, it's not, it's talking about a particular game, not the season. The season, you're right. Xander's right. The theme was the offense didn't in that game, though. It's hardly controversial to say the defense did not do its job. I mean, when you're given that lead, given that baton, and you're a top-tier defense, and everybody wants you just saw one of the best in the Super Bowl, Seattle, Houston, the top defenses this year. They weren't at that level. They weren't at the 2024 Eagles defensive level, which was number one. They were very good. They were better than I thought they would be, considering what they lost coming into the season. But they weren't at that level, and I think people kind of thought they were. And I think it showed in the playoffs that they weren't. But that, to me, that's hardly controversial, Mike.
Well, and the one thing was we had wondered where in the year before we had wondered all year long, and they answered those questions in the playoffs. Did they have enough pass rush? And Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt came on like gangbusters to lead them to a Super Bowl. The pass rush just was not as efficient with this year's team when you need it to be. The questions were there. Then they went and got Jalen Phillips, and that was supposed to be the thing that really eased your mind that they were going to have enough pass rush. And quite frankly, in that game against let's be honest, that Niners team was a joke, and they couldn't get to the quarterback really in that game. No. Whereas the year before, those same questions were there, but they got answered in the biggest moments. In that playoff game, that question was there, and you were hoping that they would break out, and it never happened.
Well, Mike, let's talk about the fallout, all right, of that. Now we got an offensive staff that has been completely revamped, all right? We haven't talked in 2 weeks. You were at the Super Bowl yesterday. Jeff Stoutland is out. I mean, a lot of changes, Mike, coming on the offensive staff. What do you make of what's unfolded in Eagle Land the last couple of weeks since the last time we talked to you?
Well, there's a couple of ways you can look at it. One, and we were down at the Super Bowl. We did talk to Cooper DeJean, did talk to Reed Blankenship, N'Kobe Dean, and I thought the interesting part was the minute you brought up Stoutland's name, how much they connected with the defensive players. Jeff Stoutland did. They all talked about Stout's my guy. N'Kobe Dean said right away, he's my guy. These guys love him. However, you look at it from the other side of the coin and say the Eagles looked at themselves in the mirror and said, we had a great 5-year run. We did it this way, but the league is evolving and changing. And if we try to keep doing it this way, we're going to get left behind. And unfortunately, Jeff Stoutland, you might have to be the shrapnel in that you want to have this voice on the offense, and we can no longer allow you to have that voice if we want to go into this direction. So I think it's unfortunate that Stoutland decided to not stay on board as the offensive line coach. It seems that he was well respected in that role, but if he wanted to have a bigger role and was unwilling to allow the team to evolve without his voice, this is the end result of that. Now you got to move on. And now you have to hope that this calculated decision allows them to take that step forward, because it's quite obvious that their offense, philosophy-wise, needs a change. Now, we talked about this on my show yesterday with John. Do they have the right personnel currently to change to what they're about to change to? That will be the interesting part moving forward.
Yeah, it certainly will be, and we'll talk about some of those personnel, because I don't see the fit. But to me, before you get to that point, and in a number of circumstances at least, it doesn't seem to be, as you point out, Mike. They built for a certain way, and they were successful in that. Now they're shifting gears. I want to talk about the shifting gears because, boy, I got to tell you, and I talked about this with an Eagles executive, not a personnel guy. So, he's not in these types of conversations, but, they had a lot of pride that they, as Howie would say, zigged when everybody else is zagged. So what we were talking about is the discussion, the offseason list, where Jalen Hurts is lower than everybody thinks he should be. And I gave him my thought, and Xander's heard it numerous times. When they're doing these lists, and I'm talking about the real list, I'm not talking about Bob's football blog. I'm talking about the Sando list, the Fowler list, where they talk to coaches and executives. And my mindset has always been, well, they don't play the way the Eagles play, and they don't want to play the way the Eagles play. So they answer the question of who would they want, and they would want a Matthew Stafford or a Justin Herbert or somebody like that, because it's easier to build a team around that more traditional quarterback set. So I say all that to say this. Warren Sharp put out under center drop back passes in 2025, and the Eagles are down at 30th. And everybody sort of latched on. And by the way, that's a big improvement from where they usually are, because they were strictly a gun, pistol team. And they pretty much still were last season, although they did it more to run. And all the teams at the top, Rams are number 1, Bears were number 2, Seahawks number 3, 49ers were 5, Bills were 6, Patriots were 8th, Packers were 9th, Texans were 11th. And the teams who didn't make the playoffs, those were all playoff teams. Detroit, very good team, circumstance. Dallas, say what you want, very good offense. Minnesota, say what you want, didn't have a quarterback. Good team, just missed the playoffs with a bad quarterback. Those are the other teams. So everybody's having success that way. Until you look down and look at the teams that, don't have success, and look at the personnel of those teams. My point is, are people just assuming if you put somebody under center, that you win? Like, where are we? Why is everybody? I don't like groupthink, Mike Gill.
Yeah.
And the Eagles are going along for the ride. I don't like it.
And do they have the personnel to go along for the ride? It's one thing if they think, hey, we had a quarterback that was not being utilized properly in the previous system, so we got rid of those people. And now we're bringing in somebody who's going to get more out of our quarterback. Wasn't the thought process is they ran what they ran because they tried to maximize what they had from the quarterback, not that they were leaving meat on the bone here. So do we think that putting Jalen Hurts under center and having him try to run a, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell, Mike McDaniel type of offense is now going to unlock this guy to become a 4,000-yard passer, some elite, pass game all of a sudden? I don't know that a lot of people believe that, right? I mean, I think what has really hurt Jalen in the last year or so in terms of this offense is his lack of using his running ability to add that extra dimension has really cost this team offensively. That, and, it's funny. I don't know if you guys caught wind of the Jeff Garcia little story that happened from Radio Row, which originated on our show, in which he claims he called the Eagles to help coach, to join the staff. He had been Sean Mannion's coach in LA with the Rams in 2015. He says he called Nick, he called Howie, he offered his services to coach, and his reasoning was valid. That part of it was bizarre. Now, the Eagles reached out to Jeff Mosher and said, there's only one problem with this story, Jeff. Jeff Garcia has never reached out to us. Now, he was adamant on our show. Twice he brought it up on 2 different occasions. He did offer. I had no idea he had coached Sean Mannion. So bad job by me. I didn't know that background. He offered it and then offered that he called the team to coach. They reached out to Jeff and said it never happened. The point is, the whole dissertation he gave to get to the point that he wanted to help coach was what he saw as a deficiency in Jalen Hurts, is that he is missing his first read, and then after that he is rushing, and it causes him to flush out of the pocket, and then the play dies. He's saying there are plays that he is missing constantly, and that would be what he would be trying to coach out of him. Stop thinking about the big play all the time and just take what's given to you. And there's an area where he felt that Hurts needs to grow as a quarterback. He better know how to do that in this offense.
Yeah. No doubt about it. Mike, what do you think about the fit of Saquon Barkley in this offense?
I think the whole thing, the offensive line that they have built, that is more predicated to what they do now. Not, the West Coast, there's a lot more zone scheming, blocking, where the line and coupled with Saquon Barkley, is that going to be able to be a fit for what you're doing in this West? I guess it's going to be some sort of West Coast system, correct? I mean, that's what we're all assuming. And he will be an interesting fit in that. But I think more than Barkley, it will be the offensive line. How are those guys going to adjust? Never played football before in his life. The only offensive line coach he's ever worked with is Jeff Stoutland. Lane Johnson got drafted in 2013. The only offensive line coach he has ever worked with is Jeff Stoutland. All these guys have only worked with Jeff Stoutland, but those 2 bookend tackles, that's all they know. The only techniques they know are essentially from Jeff Stoutland. Now you're going to have some guy come in saying, hey, you ever try doing this? Why should I listen to you? I mean, really? You're going to try to have this guy tell these 2 guys and everybody else the technique that you've been taught may not be the way I want to do it. So you have that whole dynamic about to come crashing together here, and I find that part of it. I think Barkley will find his way as long as there's ways to find. There wasn't very many ways to find this year. So to me, it's less Barkley than it is the offensive line and getting that thing back together, because I think Barkley is, listen, he's as talented as they come. We had Barry Sanders on at Radio Row, which was unbelievable to get to talk to Barry. He doesn't do a whole heck of a lot of media, but one of the things he talked about was in watching Saquon, how much, he kind of sees himself, the stop on the dime, the ability to change, and all those kind of things. And he kind of he said, this year I saw a lot of what I had to go through with their offensive line problems there, where you could stop, you could change direction, and he just didn't have any place to go. So the offensive line dynamic in this offense will be will trump, to me, Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, the personnel stuff is interesting from the standpoint, in theory, you want to build towards what the coaches want to use, and if that is shifting so dramatically, offensive line, you're talking wide zone stretch, you're talking a lot of reach blocks. In theory, that would mean Alex Gibbs and more athletic offensive linemen, rather than the big monsters that they currently have. You would want, in theory, a more patient runner than Saquon, the Le'Veon Bell type that can pick things. And even you saw in the Super Bowl how patient the Seahawks running game was with Kenny Walker. So that to me is more of what you want on paper. Now the problem Howie Roseman has is, look, this coaching staff might not even be here next year. So how do you build? Do you just, hey, I'm taking the best players, and they'll figure it out? Like Saquon Barkley, potential Hall of Fame running back. Is it the best fit for him, this scheme? Probably not, but will he figure it out? Is that how you have to go about it? And even defensively, Vic Fangio, Vic Fangio might be gone next year. And what if Jim Schwartz comes back and you're running the old Jim Schwartz scheme? There was talk about the reaching out to Jim. It changes so dramatically in the NFL so quickly. How do you build around schemes? Can you build around schemes?
And that's the interesting part is now the Eagles, by the way, the betting odds for next year, the Eagles are the favorite to win the division. So it looks like on the certain, now look, the whole offseason still needs to materialize here. But do we think this team is in such transition that they go from Super Bowl to division champion, wild card team to out of the playoffs? I don't know that. Do we feel that this is where this is going, that they need to go backwards first and then turn this thing back around? Or do they anticipate these changes will instantaneously bring them back towards the top? That's what conversation we're not aware of, all right, we need to make changes, and the changes might bring us backwards a year, but as long as we get everything kind of back in the right, right direction. Or do they look at this change to go from wild card back to Super Bowl immediately? And if that's the case, is that what Nick's being judged on? And if they don't go in that direction, what's Nick's future then? Because you can't keep changing the coordinator over and over and over and over, and then he gets to keep staying. As much as you might say, well, he's not calling the plays, it's not his fault. Ultimately, you're the head coach, and it does come back on you, because if I have to keep changing the play caller because you're not doing it, that's where his job becomes a little flimsy. So what are the expectations now that you have made this change? Is it immediate success or one step back to take two steps forward? And the building of the team might take a little bit more time if you have to evaluate everybody in this scheme to see who fits, because everybody is signed, at least on the offensive side of the ball, right? Everybody on offense, except for Goddard, is signed. So you would assume they are all going to get a look and see who fits and who does not.
Yeah, I mean, this much change to the coaching staff. You got to think some personnel will change as well. We'll find out.
Think about it. Mailata, Dickerson, depending on what his future looks like.
Yeah.
Juergens, Steen, and Johnson. All five of those guys are signed, and depending on what Lane wants to do. But all five guys are signed, and they really don't have a guy waiting in the wings. So they're probably hopeful that all five guys return. Then you've got the two receivers. What's going to happen with A.J. Brown? That will be a story, obviously, in the next couple of weeks here. Devontae is back. You probably need to find that next wide receiver regardless, but a third guy would be helpful. They really have never had that third guy that they've trusted or even really done much with in this offense. I would think this new offense, a third guy will now be something that is a necessity to have. The running back is signed. The quarterback is signed. The only guy who's not is Goddard, and Goddard probably be the one guy that you would want back in this offense for next year. So it's almost a trial by fire for everybody.
It really is. It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. Mike, how does this change what you think they might do in free agency? I mean, they do have some pending guys. They're mostly defensive guys. You mentioned Goddard, obviously, but Jalen Phillips, Reed Blankenship, Nakobe Dean, Dallas Goedert. Those are probably the four biggest names. What's your early thought on what you think the Eagles might do in free agency?
I mean, at first you're thinking Jalen Phillips, right? They traded for him. Does he come back? Do they think that he's a must bring back in this situation? Or do they think they have enough? Or do you want to even swing bigger than Jalen Phillips? Last year the rumor the whole summer was Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, and nothing ended up happening. But they did make a trade which says they thought they needed a bigger swing than what they entered the season with. So do they take that swing at the beginning of the season? By the way, all the Myles Garrett talk, imagine having him on this team defensively. He didn't have that good of a year, right? I mean, geez. But do they value Phillips, or do they think they need to go above Phillips and get a higher, more talented guy than that? That's interesting. The Goddard thing, you let him walk. They don't have another tight end on the roster, really. I mean, they have some under Latu's here and some guys that futures
DJ
guys.
Jenkins,
Right. Nobody that's going to step in and be Dallas Goedert right from Jump Street. So Goddard almost becomes a higher importance guy than maybe you thought. Dean, we had him on the show last week. He was adamant he wants to come back, but where's the fit there? That's obviously going to be a tough one for them. Reed Blankenship, we did have him on the show. He obviously wants to come back. Him and Cooper we had on together. Those two guys, great friendship. They want to play with each other. Does Blankenship have a big enough market? Is there a team out there, Dallas, that would woo him enough that the Eagles would have to maybe overpay for him to stay? So that one will be interesting. Do they get involved and say, listen, we got to get a veteran corner, or do we want to draft another corner? We've had some success in doing that, with Quignon and Cooper. So they've got a variety of free agent questions that are also tied to the draft, because if you let Phillips walk 23, you now got to look at an edge guy. If you let Goddard walk, you might have to look at a tight end. If you don't get a corner, you might have to look at 23 and get a corner. You obviously at 23 have to be looking at offensive line and thinking about Lane leaving and Landon banged up and all that stuff. So this becomes a Rubik's Cube of what's the most important, what's, best player available at these positions that we need. And now you've got yourself a fun little offseason here.
Yeah, and don't forget wide receiver with A.J. Brown. If
that's on top of the A.J. Brown stuff, which, by the way, we did see A.J. We did ask him to talk, and he said, I am not talking. And then he went and talked to Micah Parsons.
Well, that's a little bit different. To my knowledge, he didn't talk to any reporters. So that's a little bit different.
No. I mean, and that's what we said. We said, Mike could not be in a reporter. He knew he was not going to get the questions that he was going to get.
Yeah, he still got him. He still got put out there a little bit.
Yeah. So, a lot, you know how it works. Game day, you get repackaged stuff, and they repack. And the big news on Super Bowl Sunday was local news. the Eagles have had no trade talks with A.J. Brown. Right. Now, if you actually watch Mike Garafolo on the show, he gave the context. Well, you don't talk about trades. You talk about trades in Indianapolis. So that's really a nothing burger. So, but being out there, getting the feel, you talk to a lot of people. I've sort of wavered back and forth. I was 52-48 at the end of the season that he was going to leave. He wasn't going to be here. Now I'm sort of 52-48. He's going to be back. On that kind of scale, what's your feel? Are the Eagles going to I know they're going to try to fix things with A.J. Brown, but do you think he'll be back next season?
Well, from what he said to Micah Parsons, he said change is a good thing. And I read that as, and then he followed it up by going out of his way to praise Kevin Patullo. Like, I like Kevin. He's got a good heart. And that to me was, I like Kevin, but he was the same offense that we've been in that I've been saying has not been working. They changed that, and now I'm excited for what's next because, listen, I don't dislike Kevin. And we talked to Keyshawn Johnson, and we asked Keyshawn, look, you were famously a guy who was a pain in the ass. Did you not like somebody? He said, no, AJ doesn't not like somebody. He doesn't like the offense. He likes it here. He wants to be here. He likes everybody. He just doesn't like the offense. It's like, I talked about this on my show yesterday. You like your job. You like the people you work with. You like the proximity of how far it is from your house. You just don't like your pay. But do all the other things keep you there over the lack of pay that you want because you're so comfortable in those things? I think AJ is comfortable in everything except for the offense. He doesn't like the offense. Now, the change that he says, change is a good thing. I'm excited for the season. Kevin has a good heart. I don't dislike him. I just didn't like the offense that he had to call. And now I'm excited because they finally got that offense out of here. So
All right, let me play devil's advocate, Mike. Change
Sure.
is a good thing, and you pointed out. Can he also be saying, "Hey, New England would be a change"?
Oh, absolutely. He could be. Yeah, absolutely. But as again, I'm going off of we asked a guy like Keyshawn Johnson, who again was a pain in the ass, and his assertion was that AJ doesn't not like Jalen or Nick or Howie or Jeffrey.
Oh, yeah, it's not about people. I said that yesterday.
It's not people he doesn't like. It was he did not like his role in the offense. He did not like the offense. The offense just was not something that he enjoyed. Now you get a new coordinator, and I'm guessing it's an offense that he is excited to be a part of. Now, could he be saying change is good? I'll go to New England, and that is something that will excite me? Sure, that could be a possibility, but I think ultimately he likes it here. He wants to be here. And now they have, quote unquote, appeased him. I don't know if they did it to appease him, but they have now made a move that says we're not running this Knicks offense anymore. It will now be a completely different scheme. Are you cool with that? I'm excited for the season ahead.
All right, now I want you to look at it from, because I think everybody, and rightfully so, has kind of looked at it from AJ's standpoint. I want you to look at it from the Eagles' standpoint. Do you want to go through this again? And by that, I mean, look,
you have it to the deadline, so you could say we'll give you to the deadline, and if this goes south, you're gone.
Yeah, but the where you're going to have maximum leverage to get the most is never at the deadline. It's in March when everybody's got the big budget and everybody's got the ability to maneuver more. I only ask that because, one of the reasons I say the Eagles are going to try it one more time, and really the major reason is the cap ramifications. If you took the cap ramifications out of it, which you can't do, but if you did, I think the Eagles are out. I think they're completely out. And I think that's the mindset underneath all this. It's just like, from their perspective, I think it's just too much. It's like, because I think a lot of people say, well, it was this year. No, it was all of last year when they won the
Not only that, you look at the team that just won the Super Bowl. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then really not much else in the passing game there. I mean, you got Cooper Kupp a little bit over the, past his prime, still solid, but not what he was. They brought in Rashid Shaheed, who was kind of a one-trick pony. They didn't invest a lot of money into that receiver core. Now they're going to have to with Smith and Jigba, obviously, but still, they had one guy. Do the Eagles say, look, Devontae Smith can be that one guy. We can find a young player that kind of can play opposite. We don't have to pay what we're paying, especially what we're getting out of these two guys. But you're right, the cap hit will be enormous. Now, they have taken that cap hit in the past with Carson Wentz to move on from a guy that they felt that it was time to move on from. So it will be a very interesting stare down. Did they make this move to try to get more from their wide receivers? Change this offense to try to get more from their wide receivers? Because we talked about it before, the star of this team has been their offensive line. This year, the offensive line was not the star of the team. In fact, it was a huge problem. So was that their pivot point of making the changes? That the line is no longer capable of being the star of this team. So we're going to have to now adjust and make the star of this team the two receivers. We'll see. I mean, if now I know Diana Rossini takes a lot of shit from Eagles fans. She's
always right, by the way.
And she was on our show, and she said, I'm not reporting. I asked her just a question whether she thought AJ would be back, and she said she does not think he will be back. So I can see Eagle fans now saying that's why he'll be back, because Diana said, by the way, she was the nicest person in the world.
Oh,
she comes down the shore.
Yeah.
She comes down the shore all the time. She was very gracious. But she also predicted that AJ would not be back, as did, by the way, Keyshawn. We asked Keyshawn, and he also believes that AJ will be gone. Now, I don't know how well he knows AJ, if at all, but both of those people believe that AJ will be gone.
All right, there you have it. You're right about Diana. I mean, everything she has reported has turned out to be true. So people need to get over it. But you got to stop having the baby ears. Nobody's trying to destroy the Philadelphia Eagles. They're just trying to get information and trying to give you the best information. And in my opinion, and I'll say it right here, she is the best national insider, or has been, when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles this year. So that's all I'll say about Diana. I'll probably get shit for it, but whatever. The coaches, I mean, boy, Chris Cooper for Jeff Stoutland, man. Woo. That is, a guy, you and I have been talking about it for years with the Vikings. Great skill position players normally. Now they fell off with the quarterback. For years, that team has been near the top of the NFL when it comes to skill position players, and just had a terrible offensive line. And you're replacing the best offensive lineman, the best offensive line coach, at least from a reputation standpoint, with a guy who Minnesota didn't want anymore. Concern level of Mike Gill.
You're right. I've talked about this a lot, whereas the Eagles' offensive line was the star of their team. And we always talk about, they got Justin Jefferson and they had Dalvin Cook and they had this great offense out there, but their offensive line was so bad they couldn't make the playoffs with these great skill position guys. And I know Dalvin Cook was a little bit before that, but the same was true with some of the receivers and weapons that they had. Now, they did win 14 games last year, but their offensive line. Now, this goes again. Cooper was on the staff in Denver when Vic was the head coach there. So did Vic put in a word and the Eagles just kind of listened to that? Mannion, I think, was on the Vikings.
Yeah, he was on the Vikings in 2023, I believe.
Right.
2021 and 23. So Cooper was there in 23, yeah.
Right. So this, obviously, there's a lot of connections that, maybe they didn't do a wide netted search for this position and just said, hey, I got a guy. It might not be the best guy, but I got a guy. Listen, anybody who steps into this job was going to be in a tough situation where, again, this offensive line is littered. In fact, everyone on this line, none of the 5 starters have played anywhere else. They've only played here and only have learned under Jeff Stoutland, including 2, one a Hall of Famer, and the other one of the best in the league, and he's only played football in one spot in his life. The only coach he's ever had to teach him. So now the new guy's got to step in, whoever that new coach would have been, to try to now tell Jordan Mailata, hey, you may have been taught something incorrectly before, or I don't like the way that you do this, and this is the way that I teach it. Now, I'm not saying that's the way that Chris Cooper is going to approach it, but I'm assuming there's going to be something that he sees that he's going to say, hey, why do you do it that way? And they say, because that's what the best offensive line coach of all time told me to do. What is your recommendation, buddy? You're not in an advantageous position being the guy that fills in. But this one sounds more like, hey, I know a guy. Let's just bring him in.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, that's the point of changing the scheme. I mean, he is. They run the obviously Shanahan McVay type of system in Minnesota that they want. So that's the connection. They're trying to shift to that wide zone, the stretch sort of mentality in the running game. And this guy's got experience doing it, and experience under that type of head coach. So I don't know. I'm not a scheme guy. It's a cliche for a reason. If you're hiring a scheme, you're doing it wrong. I feel like the Eagles are hiring a scheme with assistant coaches.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they just wanted to change the entire – listen, everybody's been asking for this offense to change or evolve or whatever word you want to use, and they are appeasing you now. Now, one of the big questions has been Kellen Moore came here. His offense is not a Nick Sirianni offense. And we were wondering how different would that offense look, and it ended up not looking all that different. You go watch a Saint game and say, that doesn't look like the Eagles last year. They look a lot different. You watch his Dallas teams, even his 1 year with the Chargers. So you had a coordinator who had different ideas. He was not given the ability to implement a lot of those ideas. We're just assuming now that Mannion is getting full autonomy, and Nick, you don't get to tell me what plays you want me to call. I'm calling my own plays. Is that how this is working?
Yeah, I mean, to start, it doesn't mean it ends that way, as you pointed out with Kellen Moore. It started that way with Kellen Moore. The first 4 games did not look like the final. How many games they played? 20. It didn't look like the final run to the Super Bowl. It looked completely different. So I think you have a similar mindset going in, but this time they're really trying to change. I don't know if they're really trying to change back in 2024, like 100%. Everybody's behind it. You're on board or not. I think this time it's like, we're doing this come hell or high water. Now, if it is hell through week 8,
and is this to get an answer on what their quarterback is?
Well, I think that's part of it. I think, but I don't think it's. I think the major part is they think that this is the way you have to play now. They've made that adjustment, and I can't say they. I think because I've said pretty consistently, I find it hard to believe that the Nick Sirianni I've talked to for 5 years all of a sudden woke up one day and said, all right, they caught up to me. We can't do this anymore. So, and that's not reporting. That's just speculation. I think it's coming from, the top. I think it's,
and it likely could, but it's like, did Nick sit down and kind of like, man, we got to do something different. Like, I got to go and I'll pitch it to Howie. Howie, we got to do something different. And everybody was like, you're right, Nick, we do. As opposed to the last time with Doug, they say, Doug, we need to do something different. And Doug says, no, we don't. You know what I mean?
I always say, I think the difference between Nick and Doug is Nick is more politically savvy. Like, Nick understands what the landscape is, and he's not going to, obviously, if Jeffrey Lurie wants something done, it's going to be done. And he can be on board or not on board.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. Hey, he's not running offensive stuff through Howie Roseman. Yeah, I mean, it's Jeffrey. Like, Jeffrey is behind this shift, and he's always wanted, let's be honest, he's always wanted to have a different style, a more high-octane passing offense. And they're going back to that mentality, and this is the way they think. And again, I hesitate to use that word they. It's going to be interesting because ultimately, look, Nick's history has been he'll play the game in the offseason, and then when it gets to the regular season, he's going to try to win the fucking football game on Sunday. And if that means going back to risk averse,
well, it's like the first 7 games, he gave Jalen the opportunity to show him what he was, and Jalen showed that maybe I'm not ready for your offense, and they scaled it back and became a run-first team. And ever since that 8th game of the first season, they have been a run-first team because the first 7 games, they did throw the ball 40 times, 38 times, 35 times, and Jalen was not capable of
well, to Jeff Garcia's point about not hitting the first read, I mean, we've been talking about that for years. The ball doesn't come out on time too often. Can they change that?
Right.
We're going to see. That's going to be the brilliance of it.
We will find out. Mike, last real quick question for me. If I forced you to make a pick today, is this the beginning of the end for Nick Sirianni? You think he'll be here when we're talking this time next year?
Wow, that's a loaded question there. Holy mackerel. Jeez. I'd probably say yes. I mean, do I think the team is going to bottom out and go? I mean, I say bottom out for this team is like 9-8, 8-9.
No. They already blew shit up with 11.
Well, they already act like a 5-win team with 11 wins.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. So if they drop 2 wins, does that say? I mean, look, Howie went out of his way to talk about Nick and what he likes about Nick. And what he likes about Nick is not what fans judge their head coach on,
No,
right?
certainly not.
They don't judge their head coach on, do you hold people accountable? Are you attention to detail? You know, all of those things that there's no graph on the Madden football game for. That's what they value in Nick. How long, though, can they continue to value that over if Sean Mannion gets hired and they have to replace him again, which is quite possible, I guess. If you're in Philadelphia and the team succeeds, they're going to go right back to that guy and say, you're our next head coach. How many times can Nick keep handling that? And then you know what happens? They promote Josh Grizzard because he was here. The team has a down year, and then they go outside. Like, you can't keep that cycle going. So I'll say yes, only because I think the team will be a playoff team and be probably pretty good. But that's a flimsy yes for sure.
Yeah, I hear you.
Which isn't really fair to Nick. I mean,
yeah, well, I don't disagree with that, but that doesn't change what the owner will do.
Well, like, you know, Mike Vrabel, what does he do? He doesn't call plays. What does he do? Nobody says that.
I get legitimately mad when I get that kind, and I must get it 100 times a day on JAKIB chats.
Yeah. What is Mike?
He doesn't do anything. What's he do? I'm like, are you so dense that you don't think the head coach of a football team does anything outside of calling plays?
What does John Harbaugh do? He doesn't call any plays.
I've been a CEO coach guy for 20. I don't get the people who don't want a CEO coach. I don't get those.
I prefer now. A lot of those CEO coaches come with a coordinator for whatever reason. Don't get plucked in the head coaching games. Like, you know, you have your longtime coordinator and you're like, how come no one ever hires this guy? And you just get to have that guy with you for years is always like an interesting plot that goes with these coaches who are, you know, not all of them. But like Vrabel walks in, he's got Josh McDaniel already there.
Yeah.
And he's been a failed head coach. So he's not really going to get that opportunity again. So now you have that opportunity to work with this guy and have him be your offensive-minded head coach for the next 10 years probably.
All right, we kept him late at Mike Gill Show. By the way, you got to update us on your travel itinerary because it's pretty significant. Where are you going? The Grand Bazaar this year? What
I leave Thursday. I will be going to Egypt.
Tomorrow you leave?
Egypt. I thought it was Turkey.
Holy moly.
Tomorrow I will be in Egypt, and then I'm going to Jordan, and I will be back on March.
All right. Yeah, I don't know why I thought you were going to Turkey, but I was going to tell you to pick me something up from the Grand Bazaar that's very famous.
Hey, Mike, that's a hell of a trip you got planned there, brother.
I will be across the street from the pyramids of Giza tomorrow afternoon.
Nice.
All right. Good
All right.
stuff.
I'm going to be across the street from 5 inches of packed snow.
Right across the street from the pyramids of Giza, apparently the best view of the pyramids is on the rooftop of a Pizza Hut.
Really?
Wow. So you're going to grab a Pizza Hut?
There's a Pizza Hut across the street from the pyramids.
If you're getting Pizza Hut in Egypt, I'm going to be angry at you. You got to try the local cuisine.
I don't know that I'll get the Pizza Hut, but I might go on. Apparently, if you go on the roof, that is the best view of the pyramids.
Yeah.
Why did they let you up on the roof of the Pizza Hut, by the way? I'm concerned about. Why are they letting you on the roof of the Pizza Hut?
Oh, they have like rooftop seating.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right. For the pyramid. Yeah.
All right.
All right, Mike. Good show, man. We appreciate you joining in. Make sure everybody goes and follows him at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe to that YouTube channel. Listen to him at 97.3 ESPN, 97.5 The Fanatic. Mike, thank you, brother. We appreciate it.
Thanks, bud. Enjoy Egypt and Jordan.
There he is. There's Mike Gill, the Egypt man. He still hasn't lived down the ladyboy comments from when he went to Thailand a year ago. We still get those in the chat. Let's see.
Yeah, we're gonna get a bunch of Islamic comments, I'm sure, but people are people.
I don't know about that. Well, maybe I don't know. You never know what the chat will say, John. You never know.
Anyway, world traveler Mike Gill. Good to have.
Are you a world traveler, John? Are you a
no? Hell
right? I'm not a world traveler. I mean,
I used to travel. I used to travel a ton earlier in my life, mainly obviously in the United States, but no, I've never been a world traveler other than London and things like that. And now at this, I hate travel. I hate it.
I hate it too. My fiance wants me to go, so like she's just like I hate it. I get agitated. I don't like the flights. I don't like the
it's not that for me. It's like because I was in so many hotel rooms earlier in my I hate hotels. I hate them. I despise them. And a lot of people say it's like a vacation. No, it sucks.
I'm with you, dude.
Everything about it.
I'm going to Italy in June. That's about the first world traveling I've ever done. That's where I'm going. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes there.
But from the standpoint, if we ever get to the point where we're Star Trek, which I was promised early in my life, where you can just beam over there, I'd love to see it. I'd love to go to places. So anybody can come up with that. But spending your entire day in airports and I'd rather do anything else practically. It's awful.
I'm with you, brother. Let's get a couple super chats here today. We have BLG, Brandon Lee Gouton coming up in a little bit. Appreciate Mike